Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. Welcome to the Hurling podcast. I have Ruairi Walsh with me tonight. I suppose, Ruairi, how are things?
Great now, Mark. Yourself?
Great. All good. Thanks. Look, we have an action-packed agenda tonight, don't we? I mean, we'll review last weekend. We'll have a quick review in terms of Croke Park, the finals that went on, in terms of Christy Ring, Laurie Marr, Nicky Rackard. We'll also look at Sunday in Thurles. We had the minor hurling final and the under-20 hurling final. We'll have a quick review there. And obviously the main topics of discussion tonight will be the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final between Clare and Limerick, and also the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship between Kilkenny and Galway. I suppose before we start here, Rory, it'd be remiss of us not to pay tributes to Teddy McCarthy. His sudden death has really kind of shocked the sporting community as a whole. But, I mean, what a superb player. I'm just thinking the 1990s, terms of that double All-Ireland winning Cork hurling and football side. But my God, shocking news this week.
Oh yeah, very shocking. And heart goes out to the family down there in England. Look, it was an iconic name for us growing up 80s, 90s, and it's probably an achievement that might never ever be done again, because we've seen the demands now of intercounty hurling and football. So to achieve it in the first place was massive, because it hadn't been done beforehand. Yeah. And there are only very few counties with the capability of winning, both Irelands in the same years. And to have a player capable of playing in both was incredible. And I just thought it was a nice thing. Somebody mentioned during the week that if you asked Teddy McCarthy and said he was the only guy, he always mentioned Dennis Walsh, who Cork at the time didn't give medals to subs that didn't appear in the final. Indeed. Which has changed completely now. So if the 1990 All-Ireland took place this year, Dennis Walsh would have won both as well. So I thought it was nice that I always mentioned him. I said really been talked about as the only one. Look, yeah, but I suppose the fact that it hadn't been done up until 1990 and hasn't been done since, and as you mentioned, dual players now is like it's become almost impossible, if not impossible at the minute. We've seen with Lee Chin, who tried his hand at it, and just it's not. Yeah. In the capabilities of a human being anymore with what's required. So he may go down as the only one, and that's some achievement. And to go week in, week out hurling and football, and I know that back then they didn't have the round robins and all that, but still some achievement. And also for Sarsfield as well, the years he put in with his club, not just himself as a player, but afterwards as well, being heavily involved in the club down there, and the McCarthy family below in Clanmire, are synonymous with the club as well. So down in Sarsfield. So look, it's a sad news, and I'm sure with the week of the Munster Championship as well, it's reverberating as people, it's first thing you associate with Teddy McCarthy is the Munster final days. So for the family that these things sudden and everything as it was, that there is a Munster final coming. It's something that as I mentioned there, that synonymous with Teddy McCarthy as a Munster Championship and Munster final.
Absolutely. No deepest condolences to Teddy McCarthy's family, many friends. I think the stories that are coming out in terms of the personality, really, even after playing, has just been phenomenal. I do remember one time when I was in Alfred Plunkett Street in an establishment, and who walked in but Teddy McCarthy. I thought the president had basically walked in. He's just literally Cork sporting royalty. So I think, to be fair to Teddy McCarthy, the leaps, the midfield, the box-to-box, particularly in football under hurling, he was always good for a score or two. I mean, my God, it's just he was a phenomenal talent. And as you said, really that elusive elite club in terms of getting an All-Ireland senior hurling and football in the same season. Given the commitment now, I don't think that'll ever be done. So he's a unique player in the history of the GA Association. So deepest condolences to his family, friends, everyone in Glenmire and Cork. We're thinking of you at this time. I suppose, Rory, we'll move on. Croke Park last Saturday. We'll just maybe kind of have a quick review here in terms of three cracking finals. Christy Ring final. We also had the Nicky Rackard and the Laurie Marr. I mean, there were some incredible storylines here, Rory. I'm thinking of Monaghan securing their first ever intercounty hurling championship final win, a thrilling win against Lancashire. Wicklow, who I'd kind of seen in the club action with Bray Emmets against Monaleen, saw an awful lot of potential there, and Morehouse and a few others got the better of a very gallant Donegal team, and also Jack Regan, Meath, getting getting ahead right at the end against a very gallant Derry. Again, there was nothing in between these teams last weekend in Croke Park. I suppose a few thoughts there, Rory, from your perspective?
Yeah, the one thing that struck me was how close all the games were. So it kind of shows the structure is right, and you're ending up with a very competitive final, which is always a good sign of a competition. If you ended up with a team, winning by 20 points in one of these finals, you're kind of looking at maybe the wrong team, but in the wrong division, and the whole thing, they'd be looking at reassessing the tiers in it. But it just shows that, that when you have competitive finals, it does capture the imagination. The teams that don't make the final want to be there the next year. They see the big day out in Croke Park, and it should inspire more teams. One thing as well, let's be honest here, the standard has increased across the divisions and across the tiers over the last few years, and that has to go down to the level of coaching going on. Probably more so at senior level. I don't quite know if they're at the development stage with development squads, and a lot of these, what we view as weaker counties for hurling, or areas, that where football is the predominant sport. So, it's without doubt the standard has increased, and just even for Meath there to kind of hold on at the end, with kind of a Derry onslaught coming back to them in the second half. And you'd have to say, fair play to Saoirse Bulfin from Bruff here, who's probably did a good apprenticeship in LIT with Davy, and has been around as well, and everywhere he's gone, as well, there has been success. And for him to make the commitment to go up and down to Meath, when I'm sure there would have been offers closer to home, and it's just a sign that he saw something in that group last year, and now next year they can look forward to the Westmeath derby. Westmeath probably didn't see themselves in that situation 2 weeks ago, but it is something I'm sure Meath were gunning for. When they realised Westmeath were going to be Joe McDonagh, probably gave them that extra bit of motivation. We have to remember as well, Derry, you're without Brendan Rodgers and a couple Slaughtneil guys who are stars in the football team, who are possibly, 2 or 3 of the best hurlers in Derry. And it just shows Derry hurling is strong, it's getting stronger, and you just hope that the county board there keep putting the resources in there, and that hopefully they can, get themselves up towards Joe McDonagh as well, because again, they're not far off it, and if they can just strengthen their squad, 1 or 2 more players, probably all they need, just to get up there. And once you're up at that higher level, then, as we've seen with other counties, once you're up there, it kind of brings things on. As we mentioned last week, Kerry have been Joe McDonagh now, is it 6-7 years? They've managed to stay in there and have been basically top half, top 3. And the fact that just playing against even those teams, the likes of Laois, coming down from Liam McCarthy, Westmeath next year, Antrim have been up and down as well. It's definitely going to bring those teams on the higher level you're playing at, more so than in league, where there's a lot of shadow boxing. You're talking about winter hurling often in January, February, to be playing in the summer against these top teams, or teams that have played Liam McCarthy experience as well. It's going to bring them on. So yeah, look, overall, as we said, fair play to those teams, and it was just great to see close finals. And there's hurling strongholds in each of these counties. We know from, as Mark, you mentioned there, Mona Lean got a right battle off Bray Emmets.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason why, an area with the population there, likes of Bray, Arklow, trying to get hurling into where the population is in Wicklow, and get the proper coaching into the secondary schools there as well, and keep it going through. There's no reason why, let's say, Wicklow now can't go on and be competitive in the next division next year as well.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a huge win for Wicklow hurling as well as for Monaghan as well. I mean, their premier kind of All-Ireland crown in Croke Park, 322 to 320 against Lancashire. I think that was the pick of the games, really, for excitement and goal-thrilled action. And to be fair, an awful lot of good storylines there. My only hope here is that the GAA authorities really do showcase these competitions a bit more next year, even if they're on YouTube channels. If they're not on GAA Go, give the accessibility to actually show these guys, like I said, the Morehouses here, the Jack Regans of this world, because they're phenomenal hurlers here. And I mean, it was really showcased to full effect in Croke Park last weekend. So my congratulations to the winners. For the losers here, I mean, it's plenty of motivation to come back next year and really kind of kick on. So, I mean, all the best to everyone, and look, culminates those competitions. Suppose, Rory, let's get to Thurles then. We had the doubleheader last Sunday. The minor hurling final, we'd really hotly anticipated from 6 Mile Bridge. You'd really called it last week in terms of how Clare were going to basically tackle this Galway juggernaut. And to be fair, based here in Galway, I think there was a sense here in Galway that this was a team to really follow. But fair play to Clare. I thought, middle third was superb and fully merited their 5-point win.
Yeah, and it's something we pointed out last week was the spread of scores Clare have had all the way through, that they weren't reliant on one or two talisman at any stage in the championship. And like, so for example, we mentioned if it can happen at underage teams where you have players, Nyland there, who Aaron Nyland, who's doing like the bulk of the scoring for Galway, and there's a lot of pressure on a young lad going into a final. Like, what would happen if he was ever held and he was marked out of it with, either he was off form or well man marked as we saw last day, and who would step up then? And look, just at underage, sometimes when you're in a position where there's a guy who's doing the bulk of the scoring, and suddenly that avenue is closed off, that's when panic might set in slightly in a team. And I was just hoping from a Clare point of view that if Clare could, get to grips with Nyland, and we saw Rabbit had a good scoring in the semi-final as well, and get to grips with Rabbit and stop that. And I know Rabbit got the first goal, reminiscent of his father Joe, caught a ball edge of the square, and a bit of panic in the Clare backs, and finish it to the net. But after that, he got one more point. I think it was kind of, he was free out by the sideline, took the score very well. But from that moment on, he really didn't have an impact on the game. Nyland looked threatening throughout. I know he won a couple of frees and stuff, but still he was nowhere near the danger he'd been causing. So their hats have to go off to, of course, Owen Gunning again, who was a phenomenal performer all the way through. And last year he was one of the star performers when he was, let's say, 16, a year younger. For him to continue on and perform at the level he did, both semi-final and final, and real modern cornerback, serious pace, loves to get out in front, and then can get up the field and take a score as well. So we mentioned there, Clare had 12 scores again at the weekend. It's a serious spread of scores for a minor team. And look, it just means that you've scores coming from different players. It's a huge plus for an underage team to have that. So yeah, maybe Galway, who had been coasting through so far, the huge win in the semi-final mightn't have been too good for them, let's say. Yeah. Considering that a lot was kind of talked about them then, and they hadn't really that tough battle. And I think I heard from Clare management afterwards, Brian O'Connell, who did a great job with Clare, Donald Maloney as well as there in the background. Lots of good guys in around this team as well, Ger Hickey. And just one word coming from was that they were thinking if they can bring this to a battle with 10 minutes to go and have Galway on the back foot where they hadn't been all year in a final, it's difficult to claw it out, whereas Clare had been clawing out results in Munster. So I think that was a factor too. But yeah, it was overall, I thought, a really good performance, real composed stuff as well.
Yeah, I thought saved their best performance to last year, Rory. I think the Munster Senior or the Minor Championship has been nothing short of sensational this year. So many quality games. Galway, on the other hand, have really gone through Leinster pretty much unopposed. You can maybe counter that Kilkenny maybe give them a rattle for maybe 40 minutes in Leinster Senior or Minor Hurling final. But I mean, as you said yourself, it's nothing better than being battle-hardened down the stretch and really know your capability of the team. And I thought Clare, middle third wise, take away the start and the end of this game, really did control affairs. And as you mentioned here, Gunning, my God, what an amazing prospect here for Clare going forward.
Yeah, and another thing as well, it was not just with Gunning, Ronan Keane, fullback, who from Killanena, who had been, I thought, watching Clare in the round robin, had been a serious performer, like athleticism, everything you'd want from a modern day fullback. Against Cork up in 6 Mile Bridge, he's particularly brilliant that night, like got an almighty score where he thundered up the pitch. Clare lost him just before half time, and you're wondering with the threat Galway had at full forward, was it going to be a major factor in the second half? But it just kind of showed the confidence of Clare that nobody panicked. Matthew Holland kind of came in full back there for a while and did fine there, you know what I mean? And it was at that stage when Clare could have panicked and seen one of their leaders gone off injured, but instead they came out and thundered into the third quarter. And that was really when the game was won. And it's since 1997 was the last time Clare won a minor. So you'd imagine the pressure might be on Clare, thinking we don't get here very often, but if anything, they seem to be playing without any doubts in their ability. There was every time Galway got a goal, Clare responded with a couple of points as well. So yeah, I actually at the end, that last goal at the end kind of made scoreline look even a bit closer than it was, because I thought Clare were convincing winners on the day.
Absolutely, because I was speaking to a few of the Galway backroom staff in Clarenbridge on the Sunday. It was quite clear, look, they were unanimous. I mean, the better team won on the day. Lessons learned, they'll probably take the case study of Limerick Miners back a few years ago to really kind of take the lessons and move on here. But I think Clare, for me, their ability to create scoring chances, particularly in that third quarter, Rory, was just, I thought, outstanding. Just the shot selection, the setting up of the right player at the right time. I think Mark O'Brien as well was super on the freeze here. Hegarty as well, Collins. They all really chipped in with vital scores here. And I just thought half-back line really did clean up here, particularly in that third quarter, and really did suffocate Galway as an attacking threat.
Yeah, and it's just great to see for a kind of variable point of view that for the last few years in Clare, we were kind of looking at our six backs hadn't really changed in a long time. And you're kind of wondering, you're looking at the depth and the subs bench in the Clare senior team in the back line. You know, you're kind of hoping like a few more will come out. And then this year we've seen Adam Hogan, who's gone straight into the senior team and like has just like gotten stronger and stronger as the Munster Championship has gone on. We'll probably speak about him a bit later. And then you have like out of the six backs there who as a unit were just excellent. You have, as you mentioned, Guneen, Keane, O'Halloran and Hegarty at centre back. Like, you know, so there does seem to be, as I mentioned, the kind of backs coming through of serious talent. Now, the gap between 17 and maybe 21 years of age, they're 4 important years as well. And as we've seen, like, you know, no more than from Galway themselves, following up minor success with senior success doesn't come easy. Even like, I suppose, we had the famous Clare 3-in-a-row 21 team, and all that came from it was that one senior in 2013. So like All-Ireland senior is a different thing altogether, but we'll take these moments. We don't win them very often. It's our second All-Ireland minor, so we'll celebrate it. And it is great to see what a turnaround in a few years. Clare were in a position a couple of years ago, Munster under 20 and Munster minor, where they were struggling to win games, any game. And now we can see that, you know, it doesn't take long if you get things right underage and get the right people in, you know, for things to turn around very quickly underage. And look, fair play to everyone involved. And even strength conditioning wise as well, we can see a huge difference in players. And Rob Mulcahy, who's in there as S&C, overseeing everything for the development group. Like he is made a huge difference in the role. And look, it points well to the future in the under 20s team as well. Probably gave Cork their best game in the Munster final, and this without Adam Hogan as well. So look, the future is looking bright, but let's hope the seniors can add another step to it at the weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. But I suppose the transformation here from a minor program perspective from Clare, I'm just thinking back on that Cork Clare round robin game in about 2 years ago, wasn't it? The 40-point loss. I mean, for a hurling program, you know, where do you go from here? And I'm thinking of Waterford right now in terms of the under 20 and minors, you know, that there is inspiration there from particularly a Clare perspective, where you can really revitalize, get the structures right, get the right people involved here. And I mean, I think it's a magnificent story. And I think it'll inspire an awful lot of counties, particularly minor level, to really kind of go at it hammer and tongs next season. But I think massive congratulations to Clare on that triumph. I mean, Galway, look, they have a great crop of players here. I think they'll learn from the experience. You know, like, look, Aaron Nyland here, 472 in the championship. First, second, Mark O'Brien from Clare, 344. I mean, future's bright there, likes a Rabbit here as well. But I think they'll learn massively from that experience as well. And look, it all is building, isn't it, to under 20 and senior, and trying to get a few players on those senior panels in a few years. But yeah, congratulations to the banner. And I suppose here, Rory, the final game here, I mean, there was a massive crowd from Offaly, massive crowd from Cork as well. There was a really good atmosphere in that game in Thurles between Cork and Offaly. I thought, you know, Offaly gave as good as they got. Adam Screeney, I thought, absolutely outstanding first half, but credit to Cork. We've called them a juggernaut before. That third quarter, definitely with Mullins' goal, you know, it was just inspirational stuff from the captain, and they didn't really look back, did they, Rory?
No, and once they kind of got that gap, you just didn't really see them being pulled back in. Once they got that 4 or 5 point gap, it was hard to see Offaly. I thought the biggest difference was just the physicality of the two teams. I know Offaly and Leo Connor stressed it afterwards, the amount of players Offaly still have underage. But this Cork team as well, even some of their biggest guys are underage again next year as well. They're going to be like, this is the minor team of 2 years ago coming next year that you mentioned that gave Clare that you know, beaten there a few years ago. I think it was 40 points. Like, that's next year's Cork team. So, like, you know, they're going to be feared again next year. But I just thought Offaly got to a great start. The crowd were with them. Their players responded. They were up for the occasion. It didn't bother them that they were, you know, just a lot of them just out of minor. Like, you saw the way Screeney, he's just electric every time he gets the ball. The crowd, the buzz. Offaly were able to play that space in front of him, and Cork adjusted really well. They dropped they dropped a player to cover that space in front of Screeney. Normally, like when you drop a player, he goes in centrally between centre back and full forward line, but Cork cleverly like made sure that they covered that area with wing back coming back a bit deeper, and they cut off that green space. When Offaly looked up and looked for the space in front screen, it was no longer there, and it took him out of it. Also as well, you'd have to say like Cork were, as we saw with this team in Munster, they were on the edge physicality wise and got away with a couple of challenges in Munster that, you know, became debates of whether they were a red card or not. And there was another one here like very early on that was like absolute definite red. Yeah. And I would say that if referee here, and in one way, a player is going to get away with as much as he can with a referee, and a team are like, you're going to push it right to the edge of what you can do. So it's up to the referee in this case, I think, to protect players and protect the likes of the screenies. Like they're the players that we want to, you know, to excite things. And I just thought that the referee here, like in the first half, when these hits were going in, you know, was extremely lenient. It suited then. Cork knew then that the advantage they had physically, like they could actually use that, and by God, did they use it. But this Cork team have serious hurling as well. They're not just as we saw with, you know, Ben Cunningham and Healy as well. Like they just have really good forwards. Ross O'Sullivan as well, real knacky corner forward. They just have serious talent all over, and they're striking incredible like ball to hand. But again, like they do have that physical edge to them as well. And like if that's one of the strengths of your team, you use it. But when it goes over the edge, it's up to the referee, I think, to step in.
Yeah.
So that was my only gripe with it. And look, were they the best under-20 team this year? They were. But you do want the likes of your Adam Screenys, your Ravenhills, you want the talented players protected out there. And you don't want to go out, if you're over coaching a under-17 or under-20 team, you don't want to go out and be fearful that like some of your best players aren't going to be marked out of it, but maybe taken out of it, you know? So
yeah,
that's just something going forward. Again, refereeing issue, to be honest.
Yeah, just again, an inexperienced referee at that level as well, an All-Ireland final, having to make that early decision. And again, his umpires are there, literally looking straight at it and not really giving the feedback. I think we've mentioned before here, Rory, even if it was a case of having experienced match official behind the goal here, if you're going to appoint an experienced referees to give them experience, yeah, fair enough. But they need that backup. They need a support mechanism here. You could have two experienced match officials there alongside the umpires, really, to kind of make sure that stuff like that would not happen. And again, look, the decision wasn't made. But in fairness to Cork, third quarter, when they let the hurling do the talking, I mean, Mullins, what a goal. Like, you know, again, he's done it repeatedly in the championship, running from deep, his pace, his power, and really Captain Fantastic, that kind of spearheaded everything. And I mean, like Cunningham, guys, you know, just literally Leahy. I heard John Milan post game, and he could identify very quickly 5 or 6 guys here that could actually make the grade or step up to the Cork seniors next year. So, I mean, from, let's say, Pat Ryan perspective from Cork, very exciting here to see that conveyor belt of talent. And also, as you say as well, that physicality, you know, that's, you know, that maybe some Cork teams in the past may not have had. Maybe a few of these guys are really primed to really kind of give a bit of a rattle to the senior panel next year.
Yeah, in fact, I'm thinking of a few of the senior players that, like, what they've lacked is physicality over the years. Tons of hurling, but, you know, lacked the physicality at the real cut and thrust of a serious championship game. So yeah, these boys have plenty of it. Yeah, and also as well, Ben O'Connor, centre back. It was his last game of hurling because he's Munster Rugby contract, and another very physical player. But I thought he was excellent as well in the Munster Club Championship there.
Yeah.
For Finbars up against Ballyea, he was one of the standout performers. And you're looking at the age of these guys for Finbars, and they're all like 20 years of age, 21. Like the future is bright there, and it's good to see from a hurling point of view the city clubs like coming back again in Cork, and you know, going like stronger. Like for a long time, St. Finbars were, you know, almost whipping boys in the Cork Championship there for a number of years. So it's good to see the city clubs back strong again. But look, again, Mark, what you mentioned there about the umpires, like this has come up now maybe week and week, and there's instances that you cannot blame the ref for in a way that a ball is struck long, he's 60 yards away, an umpire is 10 yards away, and they seem very reluctant to get involved. I think it's the fact that sometimes the umpires are guys that the referee knows are right from the locality, but they're maybe not fully trained referees either. If you had, like, more so than a linesman, like a linesman doesn't really have, you know, contentious issue might be, as we saw at Liam Cahill, whether somebody's boot touched the ball before it went out. But like, that's just an eyesight issue as such. I think the umpires, that's where you need your qualified referees, one at either end, to help, because most of the incidents are happening now in around the square. They're goal mouth incidents, or the hits are happening when a goal is on. A guy is taken out running through from the 20 or 14. I think that's where we need the referee to get his best advice from.
Yeah.
Not an incident like out over by the sideline where there's a fourth official there as well, by the way, at one sideline anyway. Like I think having qualified referees as linesmen is probably a waste, considering what's going on in and around the goal mouth.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. I think it's something that they definitely have to review here, and I'd hope they kind of review it. I mean, it's very easy just to basically label it on the referee, but as you say, 65 meters away, balls coming deep into the penalty area or into the square, it's very difficult for that referee to really make an assessment, given the split second nature of it. So, look, hopefully it's something that the GA authorities will look at. But I suppose from an Offaly perspective, Leo O'Connor, he's done a magnificent job here, thinking of the minors last year and thinking of the under-20s this year, thinking of the talent that's coming through here. And I mean, this will really stand to Offaly as well, that this is more motivation for them. I mean, they got through Leinster with that very thrilling win against Wexford. Probably next season is when this team probably are going to be ripe here to actually win it. Like, I mean, it should give them hopefully a bit more fortitude to actually go on, maybe take the step required to get an All-Ireland crown.
Yeah, and we should remember they started off as Tier 2. Leinster is split into different tiers based on the perceived strength of the counties involved. They started off this championship as Tier 2. To get all the way to an All-Ireland final is a massive achievement. Leo O'Connor's made some difference in there since he came in. Obviously, like as well, we can't forget like this team. I came across them. Well, their minor team from last year at Forrestal level when they were under 14, and already then they looked like the makings of a serious team. But for them to be carried all the way through to under 17, like they've had good people involved, and sometimes it can happen where, you get really good people in and around the successful team. You might forget about the next under 14 starting off and their development. You can see it happen with club level more so, but I'm sure now with Offaly involved and the facilities they have up at Faithful Fields there, and you'd be hoping like that they will have a structure in place so every age group is treated exactly the same, and whether you get 2 guys off a team or 5-6 lads off a team, which might be the case with the present bunch to have, that you like develop each player to his max, because you never know. Sometimes it can be a team that doesn't win finals, they might give you more senior players. Even like just say like that Galway minor team, they might be better off in the long run. Like those players now are going to be, when they're over the next few years, mad to win in Ireland under 20, bring them closer to senior level. Whereas sometimes if they had steamrolled through an All-Ireland minor, like complacency can set in. And lads, can think they're better than they are and forget about working hard.
Yeah, no, I think it's the developmental increments here that we're seeing from Offaly here. They've stepped, last year was no fluke. So, I mean, they've kind of backed it up now with under 20s. So I think from the O'Connor and the Offaly team, massive motivation again next year to go that one step further. And I mean, I think the lesson here for kind of Offaly is in terms of contributions here. If you look at Cork here, they scored 216 from play. I mean, Ben Cunningham scores 6 frees, but apart from that, like you have Buckley, Leahy with 4 points each. You have Mullins and Healy with 1-1. You have O'Connell and O'Sullivan 1 point each. Obviously, Ben Cunningham scores 4 from play. Really can't really be depending on maybe a Screeney or Ravenhill for the majority of the scores. Now, granted, likes of Doyle and Rigney do score goals, but again, likes of Charlie Mitchell as well. He's been in that Offaly senior panel as well.
Losing Cormac Egan as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
losing Cormac Egan didn't help them yet.
So
look, as well as another thing, I think Offaly remaining in Joe McDonagh may not be the worst thing for these players' development. You don't want them making their first senior championship appearance like down in Nolan Park in Kilkenny and Offaly getting a hiding next year. I think the fact that these players come in and get a taste of senior hurling in still a very competitive environment and get their year or two, Offaly hope only 1 year, but get their year at Joe McDonagh. Because remember, a lot of these guys now are eligible for senior hurling next year, and another year of strength and conditioning is going to prepare them for that. So I think it might be the best thing that these guys will get a year under the belts before they maybe get into Leinster Championship. Because when Offaly hit Leinster Championship in a couple of years, you want them to be, really challenging for those 3 positions, Leinster final or even just third place. Because like as we can see, Wexford and Dublin at the minute, are shaky. Like there's no definites there at the minute, apart from Galway and Kilkenny. Like that third place at the moment is up for grabs completely, and it won't take much for Offaly like to become that in that top 3.
No, I'd agree with you there. I think the strength conditioning is probably the key point here, Rory. It's evolving that again, isn't it? It's kind of going to be a multi-year program for Offaly. And you say if they can get themselves set, like they're going to be Division 1 hurling in the league this year or next year. So I think that'll be a good barometer for Offaly, their under-20s, the seniors as well, going into Joe McDonagh Cup. So hopefully they can be competitive there. And really objective really here is to continue the success. I mean, they probably will have regrets for the Joe McDonagh Cup final against Carlow, the 24 wides, probably, that's going to take a while to get over. But I think, in fairness to the under-20s, they've shown progression again this year, and it's just nurturing the talent here, as you say. So, look, massive congratulations to Cork. The juggernaut has arrived, I think, to be fair. Again, next year, as you say yourself, 2 years ago, this Cork team, juggernaut, there's a second All-Ireland under-20 in 3 years. So I think all good there for Cork as well. But look, congratulations to the finalists. I suppose, Rory, we'll talk about the Provincial Senior Hurling Championship final previews. I suppose we'll start with the Gaelic Grounds, 1:45 on Sunday. El Midwest Classical between Limerick and Clare. I mean, we had the wrangle about Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Would it not be Páirc Uí Chaoimh? And then all of a sudden then Clare threw the curveball and said, yeah, let's have him in the Gaelic Grounds. So I suppose, Rory, from your perspective, you must be eagerly looking forward to this as a Clare man after round robin.
Yeah, I presume from the minute we knew it was Clare Limerick, everyone kind of was expecting Thurles after last year, but it was the whole saga over. It was a dramatic 24 hours, but look, once it was settled in the Gaelic Grounds, and I suppose from a lot of Clare supporters' point of view, you're thinking matches on at 1:45, game over, you can enjoy the Leinster final afterwards, you're not stuck in traffic for 3 or 4 hours coming up the road. All due respect to radio coverage, but Leinster final, you want to be able to watch the game as well. And look, as we saw earlier in the year when these teams met, and over the last few years, like last year's Munster final, they serve up epic games. Both teams just go at it when they play each other. So yeah, and there's all these intriguing questions that throw up as well. We've seen the damage Tony Kelly has caused time and time again against Limerick. Are they going to finally adopt the man marker, which hasn't been the Kinnerk or Kiley way so far? They just believe in the system, but I think it's maybe come to the time where you might need to put a man marker on Kelly. I think the counties that have had success, you're looking at Mikey Butler from Kilkenny, although I'd blame Clare that day as well for some of the ball they were playing his way or over his head or everywhere but to Kelly. And also I suppose Cathal Barrett as well up in Ennis, had a bit of success in them too. Now other times man markers have been scorched as well, so it's picking the right guy to do it. But I just don't see why you would leave somebody with that, that threat, giving him the freedom of the pitch because he can pop up anywhere. I know they're saying if he pops up in your zone, you obviously you mark him in your zone, but in the heat of battle, you've enough to be worrying about and keeping an eye over your shoulder to see where Tony Kelly is. So I'd be surprised if they don't change tactics this time and just try and nullify him with a man marker. But look, that's just one of the many questions involved. Conor Cleary, another one from a Clare point of view. We've seen the tussles he's had with Aaron Gillane over the years, and the one thing I know, Gillane early in the game caught the first high ball that came in and set up Flanagan for a goal chance after 10 seconds in the round robin game. But after that, then he didn't really have that aerial. We've seen the damage he can do in the air, especially against Cork there as well. And Cleary's very strong in the air, and he does nullify that threat in the air for Gillane. Now Gillane is still going to be dangerous with the ball in front of him, coming down to a quick low ball and fizzing it over his shoulder. But I'd say Lohan wouldn't be too disappointed if he picks 3 or 4 points off that way once he doesn't catch a high ball and get in for a goal or a penalty.
Exactly.
So that's a big factor. Word is that Cleary has been training this week, which is a good sign that the dislocation wasn't, let's say, full dislocation requiring, you know what I mean, 6 weeks generally easier if you're not getting surgery. It's a 6 week in this thing. So obviously the medical team are assessing it, and I'm sure it'll be tested early in the game anyway coming in. But look, it's another thing. I think if Cleary isn't playing, I'm struggling to think of who you then try and put in Gillane, because Rory Hayes, a different type of cornerback, Adam Hogan, different type of cornerback. They're kind of your out in front cornerbacks with pace, marking your more nippier corner forward types, and Gillane just in the air, you need a certain type of player just to stop him catching the ball basically. And Cleary, in fairness, tussled away with him at that and fought in the air so well in every ball. I'd just be worried, have we got another player? I'm struggling to think of who I would put there, but I'm sure Lohan has his plan B ready in case Cleary doesn't make it or has to cry off early in the game. But yeah, I'd be surprised if there isn't a plan B there. But at the same time, having your plan B work is another thing.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose encouraging news from a Clare perspective with Conor Cleary for sure. I suppose, does David McInerney take one for the team and come back here? Is there a sweeper that basically is going to kind of really protect Dave McInerney, or maybe an Adam Hogan to kind of negate that? I suppose it's intriguing if Conor Cleary is there. Sure, look, we know the Milltown Melby man. He's well up for those duels against Seamus Flanagan and Aaron Gillan anyway. Be a major boost for Clare, but I think that'll be intriguing. But you mentioned there about Tony Kelly and man market from Limerick, and as you were talking, I'm just kind of struggling to find a Limerick player that could maybe do that role. I mean, likes of Sean Finn is out injured, and I mean, you have likes of Mike Casey, Dan Morrissey. So, do you see anyone here in the Limerick team that could maybe fulfill this role here, Roy?
Yeah, well, Barry Nash, as we know, has played a lot of he's hurling out the field, and when Kelly drifts out, like, he'd be comfortable playing out in midfield. Like, he was a forward underage, and when he first came on the senior team, he was a forward as well. So like Barry Nash, you'd imagine, but are Limerick going to lose then the Barry Nash coming out as a third man run off sharp puckouts and what he brings that way? So I think it's a balancing act for Limerick. Do you maybe lose Barry Nash doing that, but nullifying Kelly? Mike Casey is another option as well. Again, though, Mike Casey probably more suited to full back line. And like, one thing Lohan does with Kelly, which is kind of interesting, is if a halfback is assigned to him, as we saw with Mossy Lyons, who played a lot of hurling midfield halfback of Waterford, then Lohan puts Kelly in corner forward and tries to make a guy play cornerback who isn't comfortable playing cornerback. A couple of years ago, Liam Cahill had Caleb Lyons on Kelly, and Kelly went in top of the left, and Caleb Lyons, like, cornerback probably wasn't a position he was totally. I know he'd played there when he first came on the Waterford team, but we know Caleb Lyons is a kind of marauding wing back, and you're putting the player in an uncomfortable position. So I would envisage, if Mike Casey is on Kelly, Lohan will try and ask Kelly to drag him out the field and around the place. If Mike Casey fills that role, if it's Barry Nash, then maybe Barry Nash might be able to take up Kelly wherever he goes. But Limerick are going to lose the Barry Nash attacking cornerback factor,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of there are things they have to think about and weigh up as well. Like, it's grand saying let's get somebody to mark him, but what happens then is there gaps elsewhere. But I've said it before and I say it again, I would try and mark him, try and get the right. Your players best. Kinnerk knows Kelly as well from coaching him like for years underage and everything with Clare. Surely he might know the kind of guy that would be best to do the role. But I cannot see why Limerick go in game after game against Clare, and one game like he scored 15 points. Like, now I know, granted, I think 7 from play. Like, and now that he has a bit of a supporting cast, like a good supporting cast, like Aidan McCarthy makes a huge difference there now coming in. You have Shane O'Donnell as well, and then you have Rogers inside. Like, Clare have more of a support, and we saw that against Tipperary where he was held to 1 point, and yet Clare still scored 323. So, it's still an issue, but you'd want to, like, I would think you have to try and nullify.
And I suppose, Rory, from a Clare perspective, what's been your reaction to the round robin? I know you came on here after the Tipperary loss first round, and you were a little bit kind of ominously, feeling going to the Gaelic grounds, obviously turned the result around there. Magnificent win. But I suppose overall feelings here, you've mentioned in terms of support cast, like Mark Rogers, for instance, and Aidan McCarthy didn't feature last season. So these are big, massive additions here to this Clare attacking side that Limerick will have to take due respect to.
Yeah, and just like the whole strength of the squad, Shane Amori, who didn't play last year, back in this year, came on against Cork and did a great job, when Cleary got injured. And, he's the type of player with his pace that can get on the attack, and a bit like the Barry Nash style, a backman who will get forward and cause problems at the other end too. So look, he's another huge addition. So the squad is definitely stronger than last year. And last year as well, Clare had niggling injuries throughout. I know David Reedy, I still don't know what his prognosis is. He'd be another boost if he's back fit again, but he might feature at some stage in the championship. Shane Meehan as well, who I thought would get a bit more game time this year. He's kind of coming in for the last 10 minutes of games. Aaron Shanahan, very effective when he came in. So there's definitely strength and depth there. That's what they're going to need against Limerick, because the thing would be, like, as we've seen with a lot of teams against Limerick, when they got to that like 55th minute, teams begin to wilt a bit, but having a strong bench to come in, like, keeps the effort going. Still, like, a couple of things, like we mentioned Kelly. I know Kelly has got more supporting cast, but if anything happened to Kelly, how would Clare respond? Same with John Conlon, we saw against Kilkenny. things didn't go so well when John Conlon was unable to play. So he's such a vital role in the Clare team. And the biggest unsung hero for me is Cathal Malone. Like, he's the most consistent player in the team, himself and Will O'Donoghue in the Limerick team. They're both engines of both teams. They're that guy who will chase 40 yards back and just be that extra body back that sometimes goes unnoticed. And then very good link man as well, and can take on a guy, loves to run at guys and break the tackle and get the defence on the back foot, the opposition defence on the back foot. So for me, that'll be an interesting tussle again, midfield. I thought last year Clare kind of Ryan Taylor and Cathal Malone in the Munster final had the better of the 70 minutes, and I thought Limerick swung Limerick's way in the extra time. I thought Limerick got a grip in the extra time at midfield. So with the games just being, we know now how the middle third is just, it's basically you're winning and losing of the game. And you're just kind of looking forward and intrigued by the battle that's going to take place there.
Absolutely, and I think you've alluded to it, the middle third, that's where Limerick's platform is. It has been there repeatedly for the last 5-6 seasons. And to be perfectly fair to the likes of Dermot Burns, Declan Hannon here, Kyle Hayes, they really did step up, particularly against Cork in that fantastic last round robin fixture. But again, the likes of the Darragh Donovans, the Will O'Donoghues really did come to the fore here, Rory. And I think for Limerick to be successful on Sunday afternoon, that half-back in midfield really need to set the platform early here and really establish this run game.
Yeah, and Kyle Hayes looked more back to himself there. Like, he hadn't been at his strongest form going through the Munster Championship, but in the last game against Cork, he looked back to himself, was getting on the front foot again, attacking-wise. Whereas, not only can he defend and is strong in the air, but just what he gives to Limerick going forward too is huge. And just as well, like what Limerick again will try and do is try and drag a half-back line around and create space inside. And we saw, like, against any team, Tipperary managed to do that against Clare up in Ennis. I know, apart from the soft goals, but also they were able to create like that 30-40 yards of space in front of the Clare half-back line, in front of the Clare full-back line, tip full forward line. And look, it was that day you had inside you Jason Ford and Morris who did damage inside, like, and you're just kind of thinking, if Clare leave that space again in front of Flanagan and Gillan, and last year Munster final, let's not forget that Flanagan ended up scoring 7 points from play.
He did.
And just again, it's so hard to defend that space in front. So it's something I thought Clare did a good bit better against Cork. At times we got our half-back line sitting that bit deeper, cut off that space, but again at times Cork were able to find, like we saw a perfect example was Horgan's goal in the second half, where there was that gap, and look, for the whole game, you are going to get your half-back line dragged out at some stage, but it's just for the opposition to be able to, see that moment and go for that long ball when that happens. Something Clare as well have been looking to do themselves, like we saw Peter Duggan in a full forward against Cork being hit with direct ball from distance has worked as well. And it's just both teams are like kind of similar in how they're set up, in that they can both hit long when they have to. Both of them, they're trying to sit their half-back lines. Like Dermot Ryan gets forward for Clare, like Kyle Hayes does for Limerick. They're actually, like, in some ways, they're very similar in how they set up and how they play. And maybe, look, it is a bit of the Kinnerk factor. I know he's been gone from Clare for a good few years, but a lot of these guys have, gone through underage with him, and they kind of mirror each other in how they do. Like, both teams don't ever really set up with a sweeper, and they'll sit their centre back deep. And what I love about them, especially in the last two championship games, they just have a cut at each other, like, and that's what fans want to see. It's not negative. It's not we'll stop Limerick playing or we'll stop Clare playing. It's, we'll go and we'll, obviously there is an element to that, but it's, we're going to go out and we're going to score we're going to score more than you as well. And that's kind of the way hurling should be, and it's the way we want to see games.
Absolutely. I think it's a healthy rivalry. Look at all the relationships between Limerick and Clare down through the years, Shannon Airport, even the industrial estate, the banter that would be going on there on Monday after the game. So I think it's all leading.
Like, even in management teams.
Yeah, exactly.
You have Aidan O'Brien, who's Clare's S&C coach, whose son is on the Limerick panel. Shane O'Brien. So like, there's even that close. You've Alan Cunningham with Limerick, whose son Aaron has played with Clare and still playing at Wolf Tones. Like, so there's these links. So Alan Cunningham being from Shannon, and then you have Angus O'Brien from Broadford. Owen Gunning just brought back the All-Ireland minor, and then Angus would be trying to like stop Clare winning the Munster senior, So
exactly.
Between both counties, you've guys either side. James Moore, as you know, involved with Clare as well. So look, even on management teams, with counties being so close together, just having that cross, and it's not even amongst fans. Like, Limerick people working in Clare people like myself working in Limerick, and relationships and families, everything. It even is involved with the players and management too. So
exactly,
makes it all the more intriguing.
Yeah, so many storylines. But I suppose before we get to Leinster, the one key I'm thinking of in terms of Limerick is this Limerick half-forward line unit. I mean, there's been a bit of an inconsistent performance on the unit. Apart from maybe Tom Morrissey here, Rory, there has been issues in terms of the balance and maybe the dominance here, particularly Gearóid Hegarty or Cian Lynch. No, Cathal O'Neill came in against Cork, and particularly that round-robin game against Clare where John Conlon man of the match. Do you see Limerick evolving here a little bit? I mean, the question mark here probably is Cian Lynch going to start? Is it Cathal O'Neill? But I think that's going to be an intriguing subplot here in terms of how Paul Kinnerk and John Kiley and the management of Limerick really try to get the key players, Hegarty's, and Cian Lynch as well, if he does come on to make that a game-winning cameo.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I suppose, in a way, Limerick with team selection have become slightly predictable, and it's the way that they're saying, this is how we set up, we're the best team, you need to come and beat us kind of way, and we won't like change things for anyone. But I just think every now and again, it's no harm to throw in a wild card, a different, like, what about having Cian Lynch as your, like, doing the Peter Casey role, or drifting out the field as your name him a corner forward, put Flanagan out to wing forward, just something a bit different, Hegarty in around the square for a bit, just mix it up slightly, because it's almost like for the last few games, and we saw it with Davy Fitz as well, when he basically kind of knew what way Limerick were going to set up, and then you could set up and get your matchups and everything else, because Limerick rarely do they play as they play, and you don't really get those shocks. And the shock might be one or two in team selection, like Cian Lynch not starting the last day, and a player coming like Cathal O'Neill starting instead, who had started a lot of the championship matches anyway. Wasn't really, a shock as such with Cian Lynch's form coming back from his injury. But in terms of players' positioning on the pitch, like you could nearly predict right now where the Limerick, if you were given the 15 Limerick players, where they're going to be playing. Whereas maybe for Munster final, it might be time for Limerick to like cause a bit of a shock and maybe start things up in terms of where they place their forwards. Like whatever about if Conor Cleary is in terms of injury with his shoulder, then like having Hegarty in at the edge of the square to start the game or something like that, it'll give Clare something to think about early on when they've made plans for, maybe Gallant to be right in the edge of the square. Just something a bit different. I don't know. And it's something that I'm wondering, like maybe now that teams like the gap has closed, that Limerick are going to start maybe trying to like mix it up a bit more.
Certainly. I mean, it'll all be revealed at 1:45 on Sunday. But again, with the Limerick perspective, the shot selection, the wide count, they beat Cork with 57% shot accuracy, which I thought was an unbelievable stat on the day. Cork was at 77% and still lost that game. So I think, from a Limerick perspective, if their shooting can improve a little bit more here, Rory, into the 70s, I think they have a fantastic chance. I suppose, Rory, can we get you a tip here in terms of Munster Hurling final? Who do you fancy?
Yeah, so like I suppose if you look at success of Limerick and the All-Irelands and Munster Championships, but then when you just take all that out of it and just go Clare versus Limerick, and let's say since the Kiley Kinnerk years, so 2017 Clare beat Limerick, 2018 Clare beat Limerick, 2019 Limerick beat Clare, 2020 was when the COVID game in Thurles, where teams were level with 10 minutes to go. Limerick pulled away, I think, won by 8 or 9 in the end. And then last year we had the draw in Ennis, draw again in Thurles, and then Clare beat them this year. So if you're looking at just Clare and Limerick as a one-off, forget about trophies and championships, like there's nothing in the games, and I don't see why there's going to be. I know you can never predict a hurling game, whether it be a red card or a couple of goals that could like create a gap in it. But look, from on everything we have gone into it, there shouldn't be absolutely nothing between the teams. I just think that Clare now, especially if Conor Cleary is fit to play, and just as I mentioned, the overall healthiness of the squad, very few injuries. You look at Tipperary, who are still shattered with injuries, and apart from David Reedy aside as well, like Clare have a huge squad to pick from. I just think that this year could be our year. The fact we've already gone to the Gaelic rounds and won there has to be a confidence booster for them. And then you think about it from the other side, and you think, when was the last time a team lost a provincial final at home? And you're going back a long way. Like I was struggling to think there. I think you're going back into 80s for a team to have lost a provincial final at home.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, it is going to be a hard one to do. And if Clare can beat Limerick in the Gaelic rounds and Munster final, like they really have to be setting their sights then on the ultimate prize. But look, one game at a time. If they can win this one, considering the Munster Championship we've had, like everyone agrees, that's possibly the greatest Munster Championship we've ever seen. And to come out champions of it at the end, it would just be a huge card for whatever team does it. If Limerick win, it kind of, cements their standing as one of the greatest teams we've seen, especially with the competitiveness of Munster to keep coming out at the right end of it. If Clare win, it really puts them in there and kind of shows that if they can do it, that despite Limerick's, dominance, that Clare were still able to stand toe-to-toe to them when they met the greatest Limerick team of all time. It's a moral victory for us so far that we've been able to be competitive with Limerick when other counties have gone out and like folded in big games against them. We want the trophy now at the same time. And I just have a sneaky feeling that I think based on what we've seen from Clare so far, and I think they've been getting stronger as well through the championship. I thought the game up in Ennis, Clare performed really well in parts. Like there was that period where they went 1-6 to a point where they just dominated Cork. And to be honest as well, I thought Cork, the 1 point at the end, kind of didn't really tell the whole story. If you were looking at stats, Clare had the lot more shots. Again, it was a bit like the Limerick one where percentage wasn't as high as it should have been. So Clare will be working at that. Both teams are kind of coming in with a similar things to work on as well. You're looking at that shot selection and percentage shots to score. Both teams are working at that. Puckouts as well have been for both teams not as strong for Limerick as usual. I think teams have kind of gotten to grips with what Limerick have been trying to do, hitting the space and puckouts and adjusting to that. It was a strength. Limerick had a huge advantage over teams the last few years. The stats always nearly went to Limerick's favour on puckouts, but this year it's more of an even break. Yeah, so look, I'm kind of rambling a small bit here, but essentially I do think Clare might win by a point or two.
Look, I'll go the other side. I think Limerick, once the full-time whistle hit against Cork, it was bonus territory. They survived. They were getting into the top three in Munster. And as Tom Morrissey eloquently put it, the excitement in the dressing room once they found out the Tipperary Waterford result to get into a Munster hurling final was an absolutely exceptional surprise to them. So I think, to be honest, that the squad have been buoyed by that, and I think that the performance tweaks here have been fairly significant here from Limerick, in terms of the shot selection. That is still a work in progress. God help us when they do get it right here, Rory, because if they do, they're creating the 45, 49 chances and getting a 70-80% percentage here. I don't think too many teams are going to really be there with them. But I mean, from a Clare perspective, look, they've come to Gaelic grounds. They've really honed in on particularly the half-forward line of Limerick and really kind of suffocated that possession inside to Flanagan and Gillan. That'll be fascinating to watch. Look, the fact that it's on at 145 would indicate to me that the powers that be reckon that this will be going right down to the wire. I wouldn't be all surprised if there's extra time here. Rory generally do. Hopefully it doesn't go penalties. But again, look, Clare have every chance, don't they? I mean, it's really up to Limerick now to, again, respond. So look, they're the champions in Munster. So look, you'd have to kind of give them the hesitant vote. But look, I don't think there's anything in it. And I think the likes of Dermot Ryan from Clare is going to have to play a huge role here. He came out with 4 points from play against Cork about 3 weeks ago. Really man of the match performance. He needs to do that as well. He really needs to put that Limerick half forward line on the back foot from minute one. So if that happened, then I think, Clare is to win really, but I think it'll be a fantastic occasion. Yeah, I'm going to hedge at Limerick, but again, I don't think there's anything in between these sides. I really don't. Suppose, Rory, before we go, the Leinster Senior Hurling Final, if the excitement that we think is going to be there in the Gaelic grounds, we then have the premiere of the Leinster Senior Hurling Final between Kilkenny and Galway. And I suppose, Rory, in contrast to Munster, where every game has been excitement-laden, for the two teams that are coming into Leinster Hurling Final here, there's a few questions to ask on both these sides, given their performance in the last round of the Leinster round robin. I suppose, can I get your thoughts?
Yeah, so like at the very start of the championship, we all said, I think everybody in the country said it's going to be a Galway Kilkenny Leinster final, and so it's transpired, but maybe not as as confidently as we thought, especially with the last round. Like, we had Galway's horrific performance in the first half, like where it was just a horror show against Dublin, and we were just kind of commenting if that had happened to them against a stronger team, no disrespect to Dublin here, but a team that had been the stronger end of championships with a bit more experience in Dublin, like, you don't come back from that. No. Look, all credit to them that they fought and got their way back there, but at one stage with a few minutes to go, Dublin were in the Leinster final because they would have had the head-to-head in Galway, and at that stage Kilkenny were beating Wexford, so that would have put Dublin into a Leinster final. So they were very close to getting in there and Galway being out of it based on the level of their first half performance. I still have doubts about some of these Galway players, and I know I've been on about this before. Like Conor Cooney for me goes missing at big moments in big games. I thought he went missing against Dublin. Like for me, he still has to like prove himself as a real leader. We were talking about last year who stepped in for Joe Canning, and he was kind of on everybody's lips that he'd have to step up now. For me, he still hasn't done that. Like tons of ability, as we've seen, beautiful striker the ball. I think Galway, more so than Kilkenny, Galway need to stand up, and Shefflin needs to see who his leaders are here, because we know Kilkenny in the Leinster final are not going to get anything easy from them. Like, and they will, again, there was always a thing with Cody, did not want to see the cup going out of Leinster. There was a famous Anthony Daly recalls a speech where he came in and after Dublin beat Kilkenny in the semi-final and said, whatever you do, don't let that cup get out of Leinster. So again, that's going to be a huge motivation for Kilkenny. I'm sure Ling will be bringing that through as well. Look, it's all the talk is about the Munster final, but it could be an absolutely cracking game, and I think it will be. Galway are slight favourites in the bookies. I actually see Kilkenny here. For me, Kilkenny were going down to Wexford Park in a scenario where Wexford had to win. Wexford had no fear of Kilkenny as well. And Kilkenny like still blitzed them with goals and everything else. But when Wexford backs to the wall and everything else, and the fact that, you know, that they're still in Wexford's hands to stay up based on results going elsewhere like that, I thought like Kilkenny maybe like they were already more or less qualified in the Leinster final. Like, so I would give Kilkenny more of a pass than Galway and the performance the last day. And I think Kilkenny, for me, are going to be a team to beat. And I see Kilkenny maybe winning this one. Nothing really in it. Maybe Kilkenny by 2-3 points.
Yeah, I think it's put up or shut up time for Galway and Henry Shefflin and his managerial reign. If he doesn't get a tune out of this team this year, I think there's serious doubts here in Galway whether he would stay on for a third year, if I'm being brutally honest. I think, you know, from a Galway perspective, that first half showing against Dublin fell well below the standard. But you could see some bad habits creep in, particularly Antrim here in Salt Hill, where I went. There was an awful lot of bad, sloppy passing. Granted, Antrim were well beaten on the day, but I think they scored at least 114 from turnover ball, which I think emanated in that first half performance against Dublin. They were not at the pitch of the game. It was when they went basically man for man and pushed up on the Dublin puck out and denied Burke the half back from Dublin a good ball source, that they really did get anything in that third quarter. So I think, look, it was a Jekyll and Hyde performance. The 2 goals that they gave away were just, what can you say? Like, you know, it was just, you know, goalkeeping misjudgment. But then a cornerback then basically passing a ball straight across his own goal, something that you're told as another red not to do. He does, and looks like that scores. So I think the resilience is there, but I think there is, as you say, question marks. Conor Whelan here has been in and out. You know, he's been very prominent against the Westmeads, the Antrims, but again, Dublin stifled him massively. Mm-hmm. Brian Concannon for me is an inside forward. I think, if anything, for Galway, it was that they tried O'Loughlin in at corner forward. Didn't work. He's an impact sub, I think, this year. But I think Brian Concannon, for his pace, his mobility, I think he provides that foil for Conor Whelan particularly. So, look, I think from a Kilkenny perspective, look, that Wexford game, it was an absolute classic. But, like, you're looking at that game, you had Mikey Butler, you had Mossy Keown, you had Adrian Mullen coming off with injuries. So, I mean, it's touch and go whether one or two of them don't make this team. And I still think there's question marks. I mean, there was a bit of shadow boxing going on in Nolan Park, I know, in round 2. But, again, Galway ripped through that Kilkenny full back line, you know, at times. You know, Owen Murphy in goal, superb. You know, he's produced 2 or 3 great saves, particularly in that opening half. Could have really opened the game up. So I think for both sides here, they're going to have to show their hand, because the loser here, Rory, gets into an All-Ireland quarter-final against conceivably Tipperary, like, you know, if they get through Offaly, which, to be honest, it's kind of a banana skin fixture for any of these vanquished provincial finalists here in Leinster. So I think for myself, Galway, should I edge it to Galway? Probably will regret it after about 40 minutes here when I see TJ Reid probably taking on points here to go 5, 6, 7 points up. But I do remember last year that Shefflin Cody, I was at a stag party in Kilkenny and we were in Clears Bar, and literally, you know, the side of Galway in a Leinster hurling final, Kilkenny picked up the intensity, you know, man to man, the work rate for the full 74, 75 minutes. So look, I'm going to edge it to Galway, but I think they're going to have to perform to a level that they haven't done so far with Henry Shefflin, to be perfectly fair. Is there any matchups here, Rory, that you're looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, is there an element of, like, Conor Whelan makes the Galway forward line tick, and our team's like setting out to let's completely, as we saw with Dublin, let's nullify Conor Whelan and see like are you halfway there then? Because you mentioned Brian Concannon, like hasn't like set the championship alight at all by any means this year. Joseph Cooney the last day was the man who stood up for Galway when they needed him, and if it wasn't for him, because he got 5 points in the first half when they were being destroyed everywhere else, kept them in the game. So there were even though there were 12 points behind, that was still, in a hurling match, you're still just about in touching distance, and you're looking at Joseph Cooney out at midfield, doing a lot of that scoring for you. So the forward line really let Galway down in that first half as well. Look, it's a question for me, like, are Kilkenny going to, I presume you're not going to put your Mikey Butler on Conor Whelan because of maybe the physicality mismatch there. Mikey Butler would probably pick up Evan Nyland and do maybe a man marking job as he did at Tony Kelly last year. So that would be one matchup you'd see, and you're looking then for to counter Whelan's physicality. But look, from a Galway point of view, it's, as you said, like there's a lot of question marks over some of these guys that turn it on one day, turn it off the next day, and like to be a successful team, as we've seen with Limerick, you just need, and Kilkenny, of course, that great Kilkenny team from the last decade. It's just consistency of performance. You have to go out every day and give a performance. You can't just score 2-12 against Westmeath and then score 1 point against Dublin or 1 point against Kilkenny. There has to be a certain level of performance you bring all the time. And granted, you're going to have the bag in every now and again, but like to be doing it every second match is up and down. It's just, and for Henry Shefflin, like he must be scratching his head, because every time I say he finishes a game and he writes out his 15 for the next match it changes again based on some of the poor performances he's getting there. It's just unpredictability of Galway at the minute. And we saw that last year as well, where they were very fortunate to beat Cork, I thought. And then suddenly they produce an almighty performance against Limerick, and maybe like with a bit more experience coming down the stretch with some of their shot selections could have got over the line that day. And then we'll be talking about Galway's in an All-Ireland final. So look, they need to get a bit more consistent. Perfect opportunity now to lay down a marker. But I just kind of fear that I just don't know, until they convince me that they can do that, I'm just going to have to go with Kilkenny.
I can see why, to be perfectly honest. Galway are an enigma at times, but look, it's a massive opportunity for both sides. Get a win here. They're 70 minutes away from an All-Ireland hurling final. They avoid the landmine, which will be the All-Ireland quarter-final against a Tipperary, who will be, well, I shouldn't even say it, because look, they have to play Offaly on Sunday week in Tullamore. So, I mean, look, there'll be a team battle hard coming through that. So, look, I think it's a massive opportunity. Hopefully it'll be fireworks there, Rory. So you're going Kilkenny, I'll go Galway. I'm based in Galway, so I need to,
I'm based in Limerick and I'm still going Clare.
I know, exactly. So that's it. But yeah, no, I think there'll be two exciting games. And I think from Galway, the midfield setup as well, like Glennon here, particularly. These guys have to bring it. Monaghan as well. He needs to come in with 3-4 points here. Joseph Cooney was outstanding, I thought. He has to continue that form as well. I think for Galway, an awful lot of things have to go right on the day. Because the
talent is definitely there, though. Like you mentioned, Tom Monaghan, he was excellent last year. These guys find form, and but I'm just kind of based on what I've seen so far. And here's the question: Galway have potential to win that Ireland. Like you can easily say it. I don't think any team coming from Munster could take Galway lightly in any shape or form. But it's potential. You see, you're not getting consistency. So yeah, look, I'd agree with you there. Like it just needs to come now.
Needs to come. Look, you can look at the full back line as well. TJ Brennan started against Dublin, whipped off half-time, unfortunately. Jack Reedish comes on from Gort. So, to be fair, there's enough of a chopping and changing here, but I think the two teams are going to have to kind of take the gloves off here. They need to deliver a performance here, because coming from that other side, the Munster Senior Hurling Final is going to be a high-caliber game. They need to issue the statement of intent that Leinster have a genuine side here that will contend for All Ireland honours. So look, I think that'll be a very exciting game. I suppose, Rory, it's been a lengthy one tonight, but many thanks for coming on the live show. I suppose next week, look, we'll have a review. Hopefully we'll have Kieran and James back to really kind of review the provincial finals, where we set in terms of the prelim qualifiers as well. Now, look, Carlow entertaining Dublin, Offaly entertaining Tipperary. So I think we'll review them as well. Is there a potential shock in one of these games, really? And that's kind of leading on into our quarter-final form guide, really, essentially. So until then, Rory, thanks very much. Enjoy the game. I'll probably see you down in Limerick anyway for a few points before and after. But until then, have a great time. See you.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.